Before we begin the webinar, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands from which we are broadcasting today. And for me, that's the lands of the Widjabul-Waiabul people of the Bundjalung Nation. We pay our respects to the elders of the land, past, present and emerging, and thank them for the care of the land. And we extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining the webinar today or watching the recording. So welcome to our Legal Aid New South Wales webinar during this NAIDOC week about legal aid services for Aboriginal communities. This year's NAIDOC week theme is Keep the Fire Burning, Black, Loud and Proud. And it's a time when we celebrate the rich history, culture and achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And so we thought it would be good to share with you the work that Legal Aid is doing and the services that we offer to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. My name's Bridget Barker and I work in the Community Legal Education branch at Legal Aid New South Wales. This webinar will run for an hour and we will have time for questions during the webinar. After the webinar, you will receive an evaluation survey and we do really value any feedback and suggestions of other webinars that you'd like us to run. And if there's any resources that we talk about today, we'll share that information with you in an email after the webinar. I'd like to introduce you now to the presenters for today's webinar. Kyle Burgess, who manages Legal Aid's Aboriginal Field Officer program. Good afternoon, Kyle. We also have Marinda Dutton, who heads up our Family Law Service for Aboriginal communities. Hey, Marinda. We've also got Bianca Dufty, who's going to speak to you about our Family Law Service for Aboriginal communities. Hi, Bianca. And Scott Hawkins, who is implementing our Aboriginal Cultural Safety Framework, and he'll speak to you about that. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Kyle to speak to you about the Aboriginal Field Officer program. Thanks, Kyle.
I'm off mute now. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm coming from beautiful Wiradjuri country today. And as mentioned, I'm the Aboriginal Field Officer Program Coordinator with Legal Aid New South Wales. I'm going to have a bit of a yarn about the Aboriginal Field Officer Program within Legal Aid. For those that don't know, Legal Aid commenced the AFO. If you hear me refer to that, we love our acronyms, the AFO program in about 2011. And since 2021, there's been significant expansion of the program from around 4 Aboriginal field officers to approximately 15. There's a couple of different functions for an AFO. If we can go to the next slide. So basically, there's 2 functions of an AFO, and that's to provide holistic support to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients by addressing clients' unmet social, legal and non-legal needs, and to participate in community engagement by assisting or facilitating outreach services, attending community meetings, community events, and community legal education to ensure communities are informed of their legal options and how to access legal aid. This is done by a number of initiatives, and that's assisting accessing legal aid services for clients, referring clients to legal aid specialist services, making external referrals to support services, including housing, drug and alcohol, cultural support services, financial counselling and other services, community engagement and legal education, providing legal information, booking appointments with lawyers and support at court or tribunals and appointments with lawyers and clients, welfare checks on clients in custody, applying and assisting applying for birth certificates, issues with fines and supports with work and development orders, completing legal aid forms and assisting with completing legal aid forms, and completing law checkups to identify legal issues. If we can go to the next slide. There's a whole range of benefits for the AFO program, and that's obviously increases access to legal services for Aboriginal people and communities, provides culturally appropriate services to Aboriginal people and communities, ensures the client understands what is happening and is supported through their legal matters, develops local community partnerships and referral pathways, so we know what services are in the community and what works for our mob. Identifies systemic issues, both legal and non-legal. We know a lot of issues come up with mob and communities, and identifies that and raises that with us. Assists with providing community-led legal education to clients and communities, and contributes to closing the gap targets, outcomes, and priority reforms. Other things AFOs assist with is to engage with Aboriginal community-controlled organisations to provide holistic, culturally appropriate support, and helps empower clients to make informed decisions or ask questions. AFOs play a crucial role in ensuring Aboriginal communities understand how to access legal aid, how legal aid can assist them, and ensure clients are supported throughout their legal matter. If we can go to the next one. As of July 2024, Legal Aid employs a number of Aboriginal field officers across the state, including the following locations: Blacktown, Broken Hill, Campbelltown, Dubbo, ICLC head office, the Aboriginal Women on Remand Bail Project, Lismore with Fairmac, Newcastle Bolton Street, Nowra, Parramatta with Fairmac, Port Macquarie, Tamworth with Fairmac, Wagga Wagga and Walgett. I guess we've cut that pretty quick, but that's just a general overview of the AFO program with Legal Aid. For more information, or if you ever have any questions, you can contact myself or the senior lawyer within the Aboriginal Service Branch at aboriginalservices@legalaid.nsw.gov.au.
Thanks very much, Kyle. And now we're going to ask Marinda to tell you about our civil law service for Aboriginal communities. Thanks, Marinda.
Oh, sorry, I'll unmute myself and I'll switch over to presentation mode. Is that looking good for everyone? Great, thanks for the feedback. Hello everyone, my name's Marinda Dutton. I'm the acting solicitor in charge of the Civil Law Service for Aboriginal communities, and I'm coming to you from Gumbaynggirr country, which as a Gumbaynggirr woman is always a privilege to be able to say that. I just wanted to run through a little bit about who our team is before I dive into what our team do. So we are a service that is made up of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal staff, and we are also a multidisciplinary team. So that includes lawyers and non-lawyers, and we have a Aboriginal field officer, which is what Kyle was referring to earlier. We have one Aboriginal financial counsellor. We have a caseworker who works with Aboriginal women in custody, and we also have paralegals, admin staff, and project officers. We also work really closely over the last couple of years with the Family Law Service for Aboriginal communities, which you'll hear more about after my presentation. And I think the importance of that sort of collaborative relationship I'll talk a little bit more about how that came to be and why it's important. I guess the other thing I think I wanted to mention in terms of who our team is and which we're really proud of is that we have a number of senior Aboriginal lawyers within our team, which is really exciting. 3 of the lawyers who are in senior solicitor positions are Aboriginal, which is really great to see those people coming up through the ranks. We were set up in 2013 in response to the Canine report, which found that Aboriginal people have multiple intersecting and unmet legal needs. And we started providing services initially to 3 discrete communities, being Lake Cargelligo, Condobolin and Dareton. And that was a pilot project which was specifically aimed at consumer law issues in those small communities. And after the success of that pilot program, we received further funding and were able to expand to the communities listed on the slide there. We also at that time merged with the Aboriginal Women Leaving Custody service, and that service, which I'll talk about more later, is focused on the civil law needs of Aboriginal women who are in custody. And we now provide services to 3 correctional centres, and they are Silverwater, Dilwinia, and the Mid North Coast Correctional Centre. So what kinds of legal issues do we assist with? Our practice in, we call it CLASSIC, that's our acronym. I love that you called that out, Kyle. We are big on our acronyms here. So the kinds of legal issues we provide advice and representation on is really broad. We provide advice and representation with things like Centrelink and NDIS, housing, financial hardship, and that can include things like credit card debts, insurance, superannuation, problems with debt collectors. The Stolen Generations Reparations Scheme has been a huge part of our practice over the last 6 or 7 years. We also provide advice about consumer and contract issues, fines, funeral insurance, ID has been a really big issue for us, and complaints about government bodies. I've just got in the slide our top 3 issues over the last year, which has been identification, including birth certificates, problems that can include challenges with getting a birth certificate, either because of lack of ID or because the birth has never been registered. The other top issue we've assisted with over the last year is Stolen Generations Reparations Scheme claims. And that could be assisting clients to apply to this scheme or providing representation in situations where somebody's been refused a payment under the scheme. And increasingly now what we're seeing is people who missed out on applying because the scheme has closed, and helping people to navigate whether they can have their claim considered out of time. And then the last issue, which is in our top 3 matter types, is housing. And that again is really broad. It can range from assisting a client with representation in relation to eviction, down to assisting a client with getting repairs or maintenance done to their property. In the last year, we've provided a total of 1,298 services, and half of those were advice services. I suppose I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that the kinds of legal issues that we assist with and provide advice on is really different depending on the area that we're servicing, and we try to be responsive to the needs of individual communities and clients that are coming to us. So I've just got 2 examples on the slide. The first is to show that in Wilcannia, we're really seeing a lot of issues with identification, fines, and consumer matters. We've been helping a lot of people who have had challenges with solar panel contracts. And whereas in Brewarrina, our top matter types have been consumer credit contracts, identification, and life insurance. So that just really shows, how different our service can be and how tailored it is to individual communities. The other part of our team, which I referred to earlier, was the Aboriginal Women Leaving Custody service. And this service was really established out of an identified issue that Aboriginal women are the largest growing population in custody in New South Wales, and also identified that housing has been a really big challenge for those women in being able to both reintegrate and to reduce them from getting back into the recidivism rates. So the AWLC service is really focused on removing barriers that Aboriginal women have to getting housing when they're released from custody. And so that service can provide representation and advice to people who are trying to preserve their tenancy if they have a current tenancy when they go into custody, down to having a look at if they're blacklisted and if there's anything they can do to remove that blacklisting. I just wanted to quickly touch on the classic evaluation. We were evaluated by some researchers in 2019, and that evaluation report found that our team is a warm and compassionate and respectful legal service. We have deep respect for our clients, culture and community. We collaborate with other services in and outside of legal aid, and we approach problems from many levels, individual, community and systemic. I guess this really is a testament to the team and the staff that we have been able to get on board, especially our Aboriginal staff, who we rely on a lot to be able to guide us about how to provide services in Aboriginal communities in a culturally appropriate and, as the evaluation says, in a warm and compassionate way. How to refer to our team. Clients can call the number on the screen and are able to get phone advice if they come from one of our priority locations, which I spoke about earlier. We're also happy to receive email referrals as well. Thanks, Bridget. I'll stop sharing.
Thanks very much, Marinda. And now we'll hand over to Bianca and ask her to speak to you about the Family Law Service for Aboriginal Communities, another acronym to FAMAC.
Thanks, Bridget.
Thanks, Bianca.
I'd just like to start by acknowledging that I'm on Darug country and I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I particularly pay respects to my elders and ancestors, the Namba and Gamilaroi people, particularly my nan Lizzie, who guides me in my journey and my travels as I step upon the sacred land of our ancestors. I don't have a PowerPoint, and in hindsight, I don't know why I didn't do that, because I've just seen two fantastic PowerPoint presentations by Kyle and Marinda. So now I'm sitting here thinking I've just made a really bad error of judgment, but probably for the best, because we'll end up on slide 1 while I'm at slide 6. So helpfully though, a lot of what Marinda has spoken about with the Classic team is similar to the types of services and locations that FAMAC deliver services to. So by way of background, the Family Law Service for Aboriginal Communities was something that was established in the Family Law Division at Legal Aid a couple of years ago now, and that was kind of off the back of a really huge review that the Family Law Division undertook of the services that they offer. And a large part of that review found that we should establish what we broadly call an Aboriginal service model, but as part of that Aboriginal service model, the Family Law Service for Aboriginal Communities was born. When we first started, it was myself and 2 other lawyers. Since that time, we've grown to about 9 lawyers, 3 Aboriginal field officers, which Carl touched on. We've got a specialist caseworker and non-legal support staff as well as a paralegal. So we're a team of about 20 now, which I think just really shows the, I guess, that the volume of work that we're undertaking. So we do a few different types of work. So as Marinda said, we deliver outreach services in partnership with Classic. So we often, certainly at least in FAMAC, call ourselves a sister service. And really we see the delivery of holistic legal services and non-legal supports to regional and remote communities is a key part of our work. So for example, one of the first locations we delivered outreach to was Moree, and we worked closely with Classic to come along to Moree. And as part of that, really what we're able to do is go and deliver advice services or clinics in Aboriginal community controlled organisations or AMSs or at other locations with a family law solicitor, a civil law solicitor, often an Aboriginal field officer present, and really it gives us the ability to more holistically address somebody's legal issue, because we know that people present generally with not just one legal issue. And particularly in the care protection space and the family law space, many of the people that we're providing advice or casework representation to often have civil law matters that also need to be dealt with. So there's a real kind of synchronicity, I think, in being able to address somebody's legal problem in a holistic way and not in a piecemeal approach. So as I said, we deliver outreach to a lot of the same locations as Classic. So down as far down the south coast, sort of Maria, Wallaga Lake, out to Burke, Bowarna, Denton and Wentworth, up and down the northern rivers and mid-north coast, Moree, Toomala, Bogabilla, as well as Lake Cargellico and Condobolin. So we've got a really kind of expansive service. So we spend some time in community doing community engagement, delivering community legal education, providing those services. But a key part of the service that FAMAC offers is that it's not just advice services. We provide ongoing casework and representation for people that are in the communities that I've just mentioned. So rather than just giving advice and saying, look, that's all we can offer, and hopefully you'll find a lawyer somewhere close by, but if not, you'll have to find one somewhere else. It's really an important facet of the service that we offer, that we also provide that ongoing representation. So when we go out on our regular outreach, we'll meet with our clients, whether it's to draft affidavits or to conduct family dispute resolution conferences or dispute resolution conferences, so that we're able to, as best we can, provide an in-person face-to-face service. So that's one component of the work that FAMAC do. One of the other big components of work that we do is providing primary duty services in the specialist Indigenous lists in the Federal Circuit and Family Court. So a couple of years ago, there was only one list, and that was in Sydney, run by Judge Boyle. Since that time, the specialist Indigenous lists have expanded to 4 other locations across the state. So Lismore has been running for about 18 months, Coffs Harbour for about 12. Newcastle has had a list in operation since October last year, and more recently the court has rolled a list out to Port Macquarie. And really, I think the Port Macquarie list was in response to feedback that we'd provided about taking court or circuit locations for family law matters to community, but also because there was a significant volume of work that the court had identified that was sort of coming from that mid-north coast region. So we are there to provide, in-person duty services. So if someone walks through the door on any of the list days, we can provide them with advice and representation for that particular day. It also enables us to prepare urgent matters, for example, recovery orders that don't require us to concern ourselves in the immediate kind of time with getting a grant of legal aid. So, if someone's taking kids and they're at risk, we can assist another parent or maybe a member from the extended kinship group to file urgently in the Federal Circuit and Family Court. We also provide one of the other probably key areas of work that we do is early intervention work in the care and protection space. So that is also in partnership with another program of work that we have, which is I've got to get the another acronym, LAFPA, Legal Assistance for Families Partnership Agreement, which is an agreement between Legal Aid, ALS and DCJ to refer all families for early intervention legal advice if DCJ are involved with that family. And so as part of that work, we provide not just advice, but also extended legal assistance. So that might be negotiating with DCJ to make sure that a person's views are considered in a safety plan, for example. Might be to negotiate short-term care arrangements if there's concerns about a parent and their ability to safely parent a child. It might also then, it may also sometimes be that we are then kind of giving advice for a grandparent or an aunt or uncle or community member to file urgent proceedings in the family court. It just depends on the nature of I guess what we're giving advice about. So they're probably the three key areas of work that we do, and they're all kind of in some respects intertwined. One of the really fantastic things about the work that FAMAC does, and I'm probably being biased, but is having Aboriginal field officers be a really key part of the service that we deliver. So our Aboriginal field officers are out in community, engaging with community. They're speaking with, ACOs and AMSs, and making sure that, the community want the service that we're delivering, and we're delivering it in a way that the community wants. Really making sure that, all kind of external stakeholders that are servicing Aboriginal people in a location are aware of our service. They know how to refer to us, but they also play this really key function of providing social supports to people at a time where they need them. So we've got a couple of field officers that have just done such amazing things for clients who come in and they kind of say, look, I need to address this issue. I've got like drug and alcohol I need to address. So our field officer will find a bed in rehab for them. We'll sort out their housing while they go to rehab. We'll speak to them about if they, do they need referrals to other services, and make those referrals and support them on that process. The field officers also provide in-court support, which sometimes can be the difference between, a matter, being successful or not, and really provide a lens of cultural safety as best we can in a kind of colonial structure of the court system, to make sure that people are feeling that their safety is at least being heard. So that's a really great part of FAMAC that I think is a really key part of the service. And we also, as Marinda spoke to, we are also part of the Aboriginal Women Live in Custody service. So we don't service the same correctional centres as Classic do. So some of them we do, some of them we don't. So we do Mid-North Coast. We don't deliver services to Silverwater or Dilwinia, because they are really ably serviced already by I think Women's Legal, Ringabaya, and maybe Western Sydney Legal, who have well-established, really well-supported programs there already for family law services. But we are about to formalise rollout to Wellington Correctional Centre and Broken Hill Correctional Centre, and that will be a service that we deliver again with an Aboriginal field officer as well as our caseworker attending, because we know, as Marinda said, the largest growing prison population is Aboriginal women, and about 75% of Aboriginal women in custody are mothers. And so again, going to that idea about offering holistic services where Classic might be assisting with housing and civil law matters as an Aboriginal woman leaves custody, we might be talking to them about, what are the arrangements for their kids? Are they with a family member at the moment? Are they under the care of the minister? Is there is there a hostile parent looking after them? Are they worried about how they might be able to see their kids? Can we, can we start to kind of reconnect kids with their mum while, she's still in custody, by way of phone calls and those sorts of things? So trying to make sure that we're, as best we can, setting women up for, I guess, for success once they leave custody, and making sure that there aren't things that are going to set them back. So I think, again, that's a really, key part of the work that we do. In terms of being able to refer, and I'll send something through to Bridget. We have just like an inbox. It's like famac@legalaid.newsouthwales.gov.au. I'll pop it in the chat. So all the referrals come through that central point, along with we've got a kind of central phone number. So we triage those in. We, if it's urgent, we'll make contact as quickly as we can. We've got a couple of telephone advice clinics that we operate on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But if a client prefers an in-person service and they're in an outreach location, then we would always say, look, that we're going to be, in Moree next week, for example, come and see the FAMAC solicitor that's there, and we can have a yarn then about what you want to talk to us about. So as I said, I'll pop those referral those referral details in the chat, but we are always happy to take referrals from anybody. If you're not sure if it's a family matter or a care and protection matter, or you're just not sure, we can work that out. That's totally fine. We'd much rather just receive a referral with some information than not receive a referral at all. So my apologies, I've just kind of talked at you for however long and I don't have any slides, but yeah, thanks Bridget.
Thanks, Bianca. It was great information, and thank you for sharing that with everybody this afternoon. And now we'll welcome Scott to speak to you about the framework that he's implementing and the project that he's been working on. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Bridget. Hope everyone can hear me. So I'm going to talk to you today about our Aboriginal cultural safety framework. I would just like to start by acknowledging that I am coming to you from Darug country, out here in Western Sydney, as a very proud Nimba man who was born in Burke, grew up on Wiradjuri country in Dubbo, and now live down in Sydney on Darug country. I acknowledge elders past and present. I'd also like to extend that respect to my Aboriginal colleagues on the call, and also any other Aboriginal people who might be on the call. And I think importantly, just acknowledge the work that's being done in those specific units in regard for our Aboriginal clients. Those programs do precede our cultural safety framework, but certainly they are very important parts of making sure that our services to Aboriginal clients are culturally safe. I guess in saying that, the broader organisation itself also has a massive responsibility in ensuring that legal aid as a whole is a culturally safe environment for both staff and clients. And I am going to see if I can share my screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see this. Can people see that presentation?
Not just yet, Scott.
Sorry, can you see it now?
No.
Okay. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'll go through this presentation. So I want to give you an overview basically of what cultural safety is, why we as an organisation, and I guess any organisation would need cultural safety. Talk a little bit about Legal Aid New South Wales' journey to cultural safety, identify some of the things that we've been doing well, and also where we need to improve. Talk a little bit about what cultural safety actually means to our staff, and that's our Aboriginal and our non-Aboriginal staff, and then just look at some of the implementation tools of our cultural safety framework. So cultural safety itself, I think, is probably encapsulated pretty well in this statement. So cultural safety is an environment that is safe for people, where there is no assault, challenge, or denial of their identity, of who they are and what they need. It is about shared respect, shared meaning, shared knowledge and experience of learning, living and working together with dignity and truly listening. So as an organisation, so why does Legal Aid need a cultural safety framework, and why does Legal Aid need to be culturally safe? So approximately 23 of our clients are Aboriginal people. So obviously, as such, we need to ensure that the services we are providing to our clients are culturally safe. And we need to provide our staff with the tools to do this. You heard from my colleagues previously about those very specific services that we provide to Aboriginal communities, and they are definitely an important tool in ensuring cultural safety to our clients. But as I said, the organisation as a whole also has a responsibility in doing that. So this is where the cultural safety framework is very important. But also, it's important for us to have a culturally safe environment for our staff. So our workforce is reflective of our client base, but we need to ensure that the work environment itself is culturally safe for our Aboriginal staff. And we need to provide colleagues, managers, supervisors, and senior executives within the organisation as a whole with the tools to make the organisation culturally safe, because everybody is accountable for achieving that. Just in regard to our cultural safety journey, I guess just previously to the cultural safety framework, Legal Aid had been providing general or fundamental, foundational, cultural awareness training, cultural competency training, and other types of training to improve services to Aboriginal clients. But we do see the cultural safety framework as a step further along that journey. And we started that journey firstly by looking at how cultural safety was being approached, not only in other New South Wales organisations, but also other state-based agencies around the country. We looked at the literature that was being produced on cultural safety, as it is, I guess, a topic that's becoming more and more prominent in regard to delivering services to Aboriginal people. We developed a discussion paper on cultural safety and used that in both internal and external consultations with both our Aboriginal staff and also our non-Aboriginal staff. And you can see some of the units across the organisation where we conducted those consultations, and that was about really getting to know what people's expectations were around cultural safety, what they need in regard to cultural safety, and any ideas around how Legal Aid can implement it. We then developed an initial cultural safety framework that has undergone a couple of different iterations now, and is what we now work with. But some of the things that we established that was working at Legal Aid in regard to what we were doing culturally safe was our Aboriginal staff network. So providing Aboriginal staff with an opportunity to get together, provide each other with peer support, undertake training and things like that. Our Aboriginal field officers, who you heard about a little bit earlier from Kyle, we've also been developing for a number of years Aboriginal client service strategies and Aboriginal employment and career development strategies. We've been relatively well at celebrating significant events in the cultural calendar and also in doing outreach to regional communities, particularly as you would have heard from our presenters earlier from FEMAC and also Classic, who do that really well. We also ensure that we observe those cultural protocols, such as acknowledgement of country for important meetings and gatherings such as this. Some of the things that our staff identified that we really needed to do a little bit better in to ensure both culturally safe services and culturally safe environment for our staff include more community engagement and certainly much more community engagement at a local level between our officers and their local communities. Professional development for our Aboriginal staff, supervision. So certainly the Aboriginal Cultural Safety Framework needs to provide supervisors and managers with skills, knowledge and tools to supervise Aboriginal staff to ensure they are creating a culturally safe environment for staff. They also identified that we need to be able to spend more time with our Aboriginal clients to build that level of trust that can often be found wanting after so many years and decades of not really good interaction with government agencies and services. We also need a clear complaint mechanism for cultural safety breaches. So that's something that we're definitely looking at right now. and also more accountability needed for zero tolerance to racism, discrimination, and unconscious bias. And certainly unconscious bias is a big part of our training that we have been rolling out across Legal Aid for a couple of years now. Just in regard to data collection, so I guess another big issue in Aboriginal communities at the moment is issues around Indigenous data sovereignty and how and why data is collected, but also how we collect that data within Legal Aid and what we are using it for. We also people also identified that we need to establish mentoring programs, and I think it's important to have mentoring programs for both non-Aboriginal staff to help them in creating a culturally safe environment, but also mentoring for our Aboriginal staff in regard to professional development and just their experience working at Legal Aid. We also need to work on our recruitment practices at Legal Aid, particularly in regard to recruitment of Aboriginal people. Quite obviously, the recruitment process is a very difficult process for Aboriginal people in particular, and we want to look at ways to make that process much more culturally safe for people who are coming into the organisation.
Hi, Scott.
Yo.
Sorry to interrupt. You haven't advanced the slide from the overview. I'm not
sure. It hasn't advanced. Sorry, I've been advancing all the way through it. But, has that changed at all?
Yeah, that has now.
Okay. Sorry about that. It was changing for me. So if I just go on to the key themes that came out of our consultations with our Aboriginal staff network, when we asked them what cultural safety meant to them, because quite obviously we have a very diverse Aboriginal workforce at Legal Aid, from Aboriginal people who are located right throughout the state. So it's important to get a perspective from our diverse communities on what cultural safety means to them, because that also builds on how we deliver services to those communities. So you can see there that for our Aboriginal staff network, some of the key themes around Aboriginal cultural safety is respect. So obviously respect for Aboriginal culture, empathy and humility from those people delivering services to Aboriginal people, accountability. So everybody needs to be accountable for ensuring a culturally safe environment for staff and clients. Aboriginal staff also want to see leadership from our senior Aboriginal managers and also from the senior management of the organisation to show that there is a commitment to cultural safety. They also want to see acknowledgement and recognition of the expertise that Aboriginal people bring to their positions, particularly and obviously in regard to cultural and community knowledge that helps improve our services. Also important to share our culture and be inclusive, but also for the organisation as a whole to have an understanding of cultural kinship structures, practices, protocols, barriers, particularly at the local level. And just in regard to how we do our work, then our Aboriginal staff network definitely wanted to see deep and consistent engagement with community, client-centred, flexible services that are compassionate, that we take time, and that are outcomes focused, and that are definitely in partnership with those communities that we work with. And I think that you've definitely heard a lot of that in the previous presentation, that is a very big, that those aims are very big focus areas for those services. And hopefully that is progressing through, but that just goes a little bit more in regard to how what the key themes are in regard to Aboriginal cultural safety. So I just wanted to talk a little bit now just about what our focus has been on our cultural safety framework to date. So we really have been focusing on providing our staff with cultural safety training. So we've been doing that for about 2 years now. So staff attend workshops where we provide them with firstly cultural knowledge, but also historical knowledge, interaction with the justice and legal systems, and then also on behavioural change in regard to providing services to Aboriginal clients, particularly in regard to identifying unconscious bias, also reflecting on your own culture and how this impacts on your interaction in regard to delivering services to Aboriginal clients. But we certainly we certainly need for staff to see the training as a start in their journey to cultural safety. We also need to implement tools that take the cultural safety framework outside of that training. So some of the tools that we are looking at to make everybody within the organisation accountable for establishing that cultural safety includes putting mechanisms within individual planning, job capability frameworks. Some other ideas that have come up have been developing scorecards for teams and officers to actually assess how they are tracking against the principles of cultural safety. Also looking at electronic assessments and then embedding cultural safety within team plans, divisional plans, and operational plans. We also want to see other people within the organisation become possibly champions of the cultural safety framework so that they would take some responsibility for ensuring that their teams, officers and divisions are adhering to the responsibilities of the cultural safety framework. As mentioned before, we definitely need the development of a clear complaints process and mandatory standards for internal lawyers and also external panel lawyers. And there has been some work in that regard so that our panel lawyers also have to undertake some training if they want to work with Aboriginal clients. We're looking at a mentoring program, as mentioned before, for both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal staff to firstly, I guess, provide them with the tools to ensure cultural safety, but also professional development. We've got 15 field officers, but we've got more than that. We've got more than 15 officers, so it would be good to see more Aboriginal field officers located in areas where we don't currently have them, because they definitely are a vital tool in ensuring that legal aid services are culturally safe. And that is almost everything that I have. I will see if I can share the cultural safety framework itself. And did that come up on the screen?
Not yet. We're still looking at your last slide that says questions.
Okay, I'll see if I can stop sharing that. I just wanted to mention that one aspect of the cultural safety framework is what's called the continuum of learning, because it is pretty fundamental to embedding the cultural safety framework, both as an individual and across the organisation. So the continuum of learning basically says that firstly you have to unlearn, so basically unlearn everything you know, and then learn, apply, reflect and embed. So they are the fundamental principles, I guess, of an individual implementing the cultural safety framework at Legal Aid, and I think that it can probably be applied to organisations outside of Legal Aid. But apart from that, very happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Scott. So and thanks to all our presenters this afternoon. I'm hoping that this information has been really useful to our audience today. And just to let you know that if you have any questions about any of the services or about the cultural safety framework, feel free to ask them now because we've got a little bit of time. Scott, perhaps I could share a copy of the presentation I can send it to people tomorrow if you're happy to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can send you a copy of the framework itself if you like.
It's funny, just as I've asked that, one of the audience members has asked for copies of the slides.
Yeah, definitely.
Looks like we don't have any burning questions. So that's great. Thanks, everyone, for sharing information about the great services that Legal Aid has and the work that we're all doing to improve our services for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. And yes, to those people that have asked, we will share a copy of the slides. I'll send them via email to you after the webinar today. So thanks again to Kyle, Marinda, Bianca and Scott. Thanks for sharing your time with us this afternoon and the information about the services that we have here at Legal Aid. And so I'll wish everyone a happy rest of your NAIDOC week and hope that you get to enjoy some cultural activities with your communities, and say good afternoon to you all. Thanks everybody for joining us, and thanks to our presenters.
Happy NAIDOC, everyone.
Oh, sorry, there is one last question. Do we do outreach in community centres?
I can answer that, I suppose. I'm not sure if that was a question for me, Judy. It really depends, I guess. We're really led by communities about what locations work for them. So in some places we do provide services in community buildings, and in other communities we're in courthouses, Aboriginal community controlled medical centres. In some places we're at the ALS. It just really depends on where people are likely to feel comfortable receiving legal services. I hope that answers your question.
It looks like Judy might have been specifically asking about Wagga. She's just added that.
Right. Oh, sorry, I only saw the top section. I'd have to probably do a quick Google search about where we are in Wagga Wagga.
There is a local legal aid office, and maybe Kyle, I mean, he's in Wagga. He might be able to answer about whether or not the Wagga Legal Aid Office itself does any outreach, but I'll throw over to Kyle.
Not sure of all of the outreach locations, but only Judy, Nick and the team will be out at the Ashwant Community Resource Centre on Thursday, so it'll be good to catch up then and have a chat with Nick and the team, Nick, our Aboriginal Field Officer in Wagga, and the team then to discuss some of that then.
That's great. Thanks, everybody. Unless there's any last questions? No. Okay. All right. We'll sign off then. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and thanks everyone who joined us this afternoon. Bye, everybody.